Witchers, welcome back to the Witcher Lorecast. This is the show where we cover everything about The Witcher, including when they put out a, as Toasty would put it, complete piece of trash TV show. So I'm your host.
That's putting it nicely.
That's putting it nicely. I don't think I used the same, the same language that you used.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. But anyway, welcome. I'm Tom. This is Toasty, and I'm Tom or Robots. This is Toasty, and this is what we do. So, hey, today's episode, because Blood Origin came out over the holiday, is the first of 2 episodes. We're going to take them 2 episodes at a time of the show, because there's 4 episodes, and we're going to talk about the first 2 episodes and try not to complain too much. That's not what the point of this is. There are plenty of YouTube videos you can watch of people complaining about how bad a show is, right? We will be mentioning the things that we liked and the things that we didn't like about the show. But for the most part, we're recapping the first 2 episodes, trying to figure out how this fits in the lore at all, and kind of going from there. So let's start with some recap. Toasty, the show starts off and we get a familiar face. We get an upside down camera.
Oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember it upside down. I don't doubt it. This is a lot going on, and yeah. It's
a weird beginning with this weird camera pull out of a battle, and then we see our good buddy Yaskier.
Yeah, apparently he's in the middle of some crazy battle between. I honestly, I don't like. I think we find out in a moment who it is, but like, there's no initial real sign as to who it is, because like, this isn't where we left off in season 2, so we're not entirely sure what's happening here.
Yeah, what time period this is, why he is where he is. He's clearly later than season 1 Witcher, but who knows? Like, is this somewhere between the 2? Is this something else that happens?
He's got the red coat, so I assume post season 2, especially because the war is started. Because we are told then, after he has a conversation with himself, because another Yaskier shows up. This Yaskier wearing the hat, and he talks to himself
and cleaned up, looking like mean, sort of.
Yeah. He thinks it's a Doppler. It's not a Doppler, and then he's teleported to some clearing grove somewhere that has like ancient like stone cairns and a stone table, kind of looking like Stonehenge, but in The Witcher. And it is told to us then that he was apparently imprisoned in a Temerian camp, and the Scoia'tael attacked the camp to try and rescue him because he is the Sandpiper and has helped elves, which that's from like season 2 when he was smuggling elves out. I was like, okay, sure. Still not sure where in the story this happens, but this is post Scoia'tael starting up, so all right. And then this lady, they probably give her a name. I don't remember the name. But then she basically is telling him that she needs the Sandpiper to sing a story back to life. And, then there's dramatic, zooms in on his lute sitting on this ancient stone table.
Right.
With like sunlight and everything, like a super epic lute shot. And we jump into the rest of the story.
Yeah, and then when we're only covering the first 2 episodes, but that's all we see from them in the first 2 episodes. That's it. Yeah. It's just hey, and then she. The funny thing about that scene is she starts speaking at normal speed, and somehow he's writing it all down at the rate that she's talking. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
Nobody writes that fast.
And they're showing us, she starts off with her narrating. We've heard this narration before with the trailer that we broke down. This is the same narration. And we're meeting our characters, Fjall of Dog Clan, who is like a royal protector. Dog Clan like protects like the throne. And then we also, see like Isla of Raven Clan, or the Lark. But essentially, this happens 1,200 years ago. About Fjall of Dog Clan, he gets banished from his his position, because he's banging the princess. Right. You're not supposed to do that.
Right. They had to sprinkle a little bit of Game of Thrones in here, so they tried that.
Just a little bit.
Tried a little bit of that. All right.
Yeah. Apparently they're madly in love, so much so that they can't keep it in their pants. And he is found immediately after. They've only done this once before. And he's really like, hey, I don't think we should do this. And she's like, I don't care. I love you. And then they go to town, and then his like dad walks in. It's like, well, and so he gets banished for that. Then we pan over to this random town. We see Isla of Ravenclan, but we don't know that yet. Or she's the Lark, a traveling bard or warrior bard. Some random barmaid is getting harassed in the inn while she's singing a song. So she beats up the dude and his friends, and then goes back to singing. Real cool character. Then she starts kind of having a conversation. I guess she gets attached to this random barmaid that she saved or whatever. We find out that this random barmaid is Etheline.
Because
that's
cool. Just because, sure.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a lot of these characters that have names that you might recognize, even though this is 1,200 years ago. Yeah,
which is like, I think that fits in the I don't remember exactly. I think it might, but like
elves. Who knows?
Yeah, they're elves. They live a long time.
I feel like this is what the writers were like, where they were like, elves live a long time, right? Okay, let's just put all these people in the story.
Point, we see that everyone is an elf. There are no humans.
Right.
We see elves. This is also the time, supposedly, that there's werebubs and dwarves and stuff. We will see, I believe, exactly one dwarf this entire series. But so they meet up in prison after getting arrested for something.
She gets called out by the people she beat up to the guards who come and arrest her. I guess they tell her some story about her disturbing the peace, and it wasn't actually them or something. Who knows? But we don't actually get that justification. We just know that she's now thrown in a prison cell, and Fial is there, right? And on top of that, they're both probably going to be like hanged or something, right? Like whatever the thing they did wrong was like a death sentence. It's like, okay, you know what this feels like? It feels like we need tension at every turn in the story. So everything needs to be ratcheted up to 11. So instead of just like, she gets thrown in prison because people mistreated her and she's probably just going to have to be stuck in the prison for the next week, which would have been fine. Instead, it's like, oh, well, they're going to die, so they better find a way out of here.
Yeah. So they don't like each other at all, apparently, because Fial fought one of her relatives, and she then vowed that she would kill him the next time she came across him for that reason. They like talk for a bit, then they start fighting each other. The guards come along and apparently Fial's been bailed out, so he leaves. Apparently she's stolen his necklace during that scrap, so she uses it to break out.
Because it's like a little horn. It's like a little
like tooth or something,
antler or tooth or something pointy.
Yeah. And then like he's being told he needs to come back to like Zentria, which is where like he was protecting people, by the way. And then Isla, her sister, comes along and is trying to like get her back into like the Raven clan business. She doesn't want to. And then her sister is just like shot and killed by a crossbow bolt because they're attacked by random thugs.
Right. Right. And of course, as with any of these scenes, the main characters don't get killed. It's the other character who gets shot. And although she could have gotten shot by any of them because there were multiple, that doesn't happen, and a fight ensues.
Which I might add specifically that these random thugs were sent to kill Fjall and Isla specifically, so they decided to kill her sister first, naturally, rather than killing her when they had the element of surprise. Come to find out, these individuals are a random assortment of people from all the kingdoms that have been warring at each other because they agreed to work together because they want war so bad that they'll work together to keep war going. Because cut to Zentria, that's seriously the reasoning.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that cut to Zentria, the princess's brother, or I guess he's the king, I don't know, who is the ruler of Zentria. He's trying to broker a peace between all the nations to end the fighting. And ends up all of his like closest advisors end up throwing a coup because they don't want peace. They want the war to continue, and they kill all of the leaders of all the nations that are involved here. And including and Dog Clan too, like the other clans who are protecting each like different kingdom or whatever. And the princess is just like actually slits Fjall's sister's throat, just like which is like, you figure you might have some qualms about that, but she's just fine with it. She's fine with the coup.
She's so in love with him, and yet all of a sudden now she's like slitting his sister's throat because she wants the coup to happen, and somehow she's on the inside of this. But we're never explained exactly how or why, because she ends up not benefiting from it, because she ends up, what we see in the future, that she realizes,
puppet empress.
I'm a puppet. She's like, there are a few scenes that like clue us into the fact that she didn't realize this yet. Like she tries to leave and the guards get in the way, or she's in the room and she's like, I want to go see my people. And they're like, yeah, it's not a good idea. You stay here. And we get these like zoom ins on her face of like, oh, I don't have any control. And like, and all of this, by this point in this episode, it feels like this could have been multiple episodes where you actually had time to get to know who the characters were and actually see their motivations. I feel like it, and obviously it's framed like we're moving through it at a quick pace. Like, let me tell you a story and here's all the beats in the story, right? That's how it starts. So I get it. But at the same time, like, has that worked for any show? To just do like a really quick story, like this is, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of 80s like fantasy movies post Conan the Barbarian, where they're like, we have to give you an epic adventure in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like, none of it really works together because you don't have any time to actually like anybody, really.
Yeah. So they do this coup with the intention of like preventing peace, just to end up killing all the leaders of the nations and uniting everyone under the grand banner of the Zentrian Empire. Which in direct correlation stops the war that they were fighting, because now they're all the same empire. Granted, there's gonna be rebellion and stuff, obviously,
right.
But your goal, whatever.
Somehow that is supposed to make sense.
Yeah, but, she gets made a puppet empress, but it's shown to us that the real person in charge is Balor, the court sage, who has been using the monoliths to bring monsters into the world. And honestly, Tom, this is the most terrifying monster I think we've ever seen.
The big one.
The CGI on it was so bad.
It was so bad. Horrific. It was so bad.
Yeah, there's some random monster.
Yeah, they summoned a video game monster from 2001.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was. CGI was like, it was very obviously not like, it was cut into the frame, like so you could tell it just sat out. And also, I don't know what, as far as like lore wise, what ancient ancestor this might be of any monster, because this thing is so,
it's got like a horror-esque looking face where you can barely see if there's even eyes.
It's got like a weird diamond pyramid face with
Right.
like 3 eyes.
Are there 3 eyes? Like we got a glimpse at it. It's got wings. It's got a big long body, but it's not
tendrils that
it's not a dragon.
Disintegrate people with rays.
Are those tendrils? Is that what those are? Okay, yeah, and it shoots like laser beams.
It shoots laser beams,
and then everybody
disintegrate people.
Turns into puffs of red. Like paste or smoke or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
They turn into like red dust, somehow bloody dust. I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just, so it just like, it's obviously unstoppable because it can just disintegrate people like with no problem. And Balor is doing this and he's like trying to get chaos magic as well. You know, very important.
Right. Right.
Anyways, so they like go back to the coups happened. We go back to Fial and Isla, who are deciding to work together to kill the Empress. They have both decided that the Empress needs to die. Ignore the fact that Fial was just in love with this Empress so much that he lost his position in his family for her like 3 days ago. I think. I don't really know what the timeline is. It could have been 6 years. It could have been 2 days.
Yeah,
I really don't know the
really
time period between
clear.
that.
Yeah.
And they agree to work together. They go find Skian.
Well, there's the Blood
Ghost
Pact.
Tribe.
There's the Blood Pact.
Did the Blood Pact happen this episode? I don't.
Does it happen this episode?
Oh,
does it happen in the second episode?
I have no idea when it happens. I know it happens, but I can't remember when it happened.
I feel like it happened.
Probably was this episode.
I feel like it happened in the first episode because that's when they.
So I guess it did.
Because that's when they agree to like, okay, we're gonna work together and we're gonna find commonality here and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And so you get the moment where, of course, they cut themselves on the forearms. Across the forearms, which is a wonderful way to make sure that you murder yourself if you want to bleed out, and then they shake hands. They couldn't have done the typical TV trope of like cutting the palm of the hand or something, right?
So that your blood is supposed to mix on these blood packs. That's the point of them. It doesn't in this because they cut their forearms and then put their hands over it.
It's weird. It's weird.
But they're bound now. They're bonded.
Sure. Yeah.
In this cause together by blood and by the blade. Cool. Then they go to meet Skian. They deal with a bunch of traps. They are now sarcastically jabbing at each other, even though they hated each other like the day prior.
Right. Right. They're joking.
Giving sarcastic jabs, joking. He falls
in. Right.
Skian shows up, and basically takes him back to her like tent, and they're like, hey, we need help, we want you to come with. Also, by the way, Skian is Isla's old swordmaster.
Yes, and from the Ghost Tribe, and we explained that she's the last of the Ghost Tribe, and that's why she was taken in as swordmaster by the Birdie Tribe or whatever she is, Raven. Raven clan. But yeah, she's the last. Isla's old swordmaster, and Isla's like, hey, we're trying to get all the help we can get. We want you to help us. And Skian's just like, no, that's not going to happen. Right. It's the typical thing of the like one character proposes something to another character, and the other character has to tell them, by no means will that ever happen, and then it happens. Yeah, so then she tests them to see how well they fight together, and deems that they fight well enough together that even though she kicks their butts, deserve her help. They don't work well together at all. There's no coordination in this fight whatsoever. They're just both attacking her at the same time and getting their asses handed to them, but they're not working together. They're just attacking at the same time. Right. But apparently that was good enough teamwork that Skian agrees to go with them. And they set her tent on fire and leave. And because that's dramatic. Here's another question for you, Toasty. I don't remember the tribes. Are these new? Is this an invention? New. This is 100% an invention of the show. 100% a new, because that's what I thought too. Okay, so the dog, the raven, and now the ghost. Weird, being that ghosts aren't actual animals and monsters have not come into the world yet. I guess they are still ghosts though somehow. Strange
superstition.
Strange naming of things, but okay. Let's move on from that, right? Also, I guess they were like, well, there has to be like the Witcher, the different types of Witcher groups, right? And they're all animals, so we're going to go with animals plus a ghost.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. Not really sure. So yeah, moving on to episode 2. So basically the trio are traveling together and they decide that, you know what? 3 people really isn't enough people to fight an empire. Pretty good deduction there, honestly.
Yeah,
props to you.
I agree.
So they're like, we need to hire some sellswords and some mercenaries to fight with us so that we have an actual chance. So they decide to rob a bank.
Right.
So they go to this bank and just walk in the front door. You know, they go to the town, go to the bank, walk in the front door. They're not really doing a whole lot of effort to like hide themselves here, which also Isla and Fjall are also very wanted.
Right.
Because they pose a threat to the new empire.
And we've seen pictures of them everywhere. There's wanted signs everywhere.
Yeah. So they go to the bank, they walk in. The bank is empty.
Right. Not only is it empty, but nobody has even gone back and like reclosed the doors. Like,
yeah.
Like if there's a run on a bank, you know, the bankers are still going to treat their property well. Like close the freaking doors. Yeah. The little vault doors. There's all these vault doors all around them.
Oh, okay. I was wrong. Okay. Sorry. There is a second dwarf in this show. I believe this is the bank guy.
Yeah. I mean, he seems like he might be a dwarf.
Yeah. And they're like, hey, where's the money? And he's like, everyone took it because shit's going crazy in the world and they decided that they needed their money. So they can't rob this bank. And then they realized that the guards noticed them because they weren't doing a very big effort at trying to hide.
No,
so the guards took notice that, hey, these 2 highly wanted criminals of the state are here in town. So they attack the bank with them in it. And there's no other way out except for the trapdoor that the dwarf goes under and then locks behind him. So they have to fight off the guards together as a clan.
And to say something positive here, I mean, it's very unlikely that they're going to fight their way out of this, but yet somehow they do, right? And
sort of
action, adventure moments, fighting stuff. The fighting choreography is pretty cool. There's not too much to complain about that. The use of the doors on the vaults as shields was cool. I would imagine those things are extremely heavy, but let's just...
we'll see. You would think that, right, Tom? But you would also come to the conclusion that if this is a bank and it's supposed to secure everyone's money, that the doors wouldn't just pop off
the hinges when the guy pulls them
like a piece of plastic.
Right. Also weird. Yes. Also, they would be extremely heavy and very difficult to wield in a fight.
Where are they holding it?
Right. That was the other thing. Like a shield has a strap in the middle or like a handle with a strap.
I assume that there's a handle from the side of the door that which you open it up at.
Right.
But you're holding it, I'm assuming, at the edge of the door, which means that the rest of the door has nothing to
bond it to your arm.
Weight distribution.
Right.
So you're just having that's some insane wrist strength to hold that thing up the whole time.
Yeah. So other than that stuff, the fight is pretty cool. And
pretty cool.
They're all working together for the first time and actually coordinating their fighting, which is pretty cool.
Right. Until they don't, because Isla gets really upset at one guy in particular and decides to stab the shit out of him, therefore breaking formation for too long and leaving a vulnerability in the state because
Ghost Tribe Lady
is so invested in their ability to work as a clan that she pays more attention to someone fucking up in the back than the 17 people attacking her from the front.
Right. And she gets one wound in the back. So she gets
wounded.
Right.
Which you said this is a good fight scene. Yeah, it is. It's a pretty good fight scene. It's really enjoyable.
It's got some cool moments. There's
Tom.
Yeah.
I wonder, do you think that like maybe depending on what clan you're from, that like maybe your fighting styles would be different and like therefore wouldn't mesh well with like the other clans? Because like we know that Ghost Clan were the best swordsmen. So like their fighting styles, I would assume, focus on like sword play, and the best way to do that and probably
Yes.
wouldn't go very well with the dude with an axe and then the dude the lady that uses knives to stab people.
You know what would have solved this was, instead of getting the dumb fight scene where they try to attack Ghost Lady and then she's like, okay, you guys are cool. Instead, if we had some sort of like, yes, I owe you from some past thing, I will help you. And then she like spars with them and realizes that they're not coordinated at all. And then we get a training montage. That could have solved all of it. Like, here, let's train. Here's how you guys utilize your different weapons and your different styles and make them work together, because I'm fancy, training sword specialist lady or whatever, right? And then we get to the bank and we're like, oh, look how freaking coordinated they are now. This is great, right?
But apparently they work flawlessly together almost until Skian gets stabbed, but they're still able to kind of like fend off the attackers, which finally I think like a head guard walks in.
Somebody smart enough to go,
out.
You know what? I'm not going to run into your weapons with my face. Let's just back out of here and just burn the thing down. So, like, but doesn't say it to the guy behind him.
Yeah.
Just somehow together they know, okay, we're no longer running at these guys.
Which, like, also, he steps out, locks the doors from the outside somehow, and sets the building on fire. Which, I mean, I don't remember the outside of this building, but the inside doesn't appear to have anything wood except for the desk that the dwarf was sitting on.
Right.
So, but apparently the outside is all wood.
I guess so.
Able to set it on
I guess
fire.
So. Yeah, they bar the door somehow or whatever. Yeah. Right. Now here's the weirdest thing, to not belabor the scene too much longer. They're like, okay, well, we have to escape through the hatch in the ground, and then Axe Dude Fial tries to like get his axe to try to chop open the bolt that's like the piece of metal that's holding the thing closed, right? And then one of them's like, that's dwarven steel. And then he's like, ah, crap. And then another one hands him another weapon and goes, this is made out of dwarven steel too. And he's like, yes. And in one swing breaks the piece of metal holding so they can open the... Dude, when was the last time you took any type of steel or iron or anything and swung it against any other type of iron and were able to cut one with the other without like heating it to the point where it's going to break? Or like, that's just not how metals work.
I don't know. I don't really know. Like
they could have said this is copper reinforced and we have regular steel weapons. That still would have taken an hour of hacking at the thing before it actually broke.
Honestly, it might have probably worked better if that like what's her face had just ripped off his necklace and picked the lock again with the necklace, because she already did it. So at least it wouldn't be that ludicrous of an idea that she could do it again.
Oh, she's good at lock picks, and she's used this necklace before in a similar lock. Okay, boom, pick the lock.
You'd be solid. But
plus, in a show where they're ramping everything up to 11 all the time, they could have absolutely in this moment had some sort of dramatic moment where, oh my god, I got to pick the lock. It's taking longer than expected, and the fire's getting closer and getting closer, and they're almost burned to death. And then in the last moment, they pick the lock. Right? This would have been a perfect scene for something like that.
Filling with smoke so heavily that they're all like coughing and hacking and like nearly like unconscious from it. Like, because I imagine that was the idea, was that they were just going to kill them with the smoke. Because I don't think the fire, I'm giving props to the logic whenever it doesn't make sense, but whatever. But yeah, they escape through it. Yeah. They get through, they get out, they get to the woods. And apparently Skian was stabbed with the poison blade. Don't know why that guard had a poison blade specifically.
Why do guards have poison blades? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
But she's obviously very injured. So she's like, hey, leave me behind. I'm just going to slow you down. And they're like, no, we're obviously so attached to you at this point that we can't leave you behind. We have to save you. So they decide to leave her by herself by a tree, and go looking for herbs. She's completely undefended, whatever. So, when they come back, there's a strange man there waiting for them, like standing over her, like holding a weapon. And they're like, oh, this could be a problem, but it's all right because he's here to help and eventually join their cause.
He hates everybody too and feels like now's his time, so he's going to join them. And he also happens to know somebody who might be able to heal her wound.
Yeah. So they, team up. This guy reveals himself to be Callan or Kalan, or the name that they will use more often, Brother Death.
Yes. Yeah, there is that moment of like, but most people call me Brother Death. And it's
all right, buddy.
Okay, a 15-year-old emo child. Cool.
Yeah.
Like,
so
got it.
They
also, he's not even dressed like freaking like he doesn't have like a skull mask on. Like there's nothing like if you're gonna go by Brother Death, then dress it up a little bit, dude.
He also apparently uses cleavers, so he might have used to been a butcher. I don't know.
Maybe.
But he takes them to this swamp, and there's a bunch of like mist around, and he's like, hey, be careful. The mist do weird things to people. And so they all keep
trying to get through it, basically, is his advice as he wanders off forward by himself into the fog.
Yeah. And
good luck.
So Fial and Isla are subjected to like hallucinations from the mists. Fial sees like visions of his brother's death, which, by the way, he had a brother who died.
We've learned.
I didn't know if y'all knew that.
Yeah.
And then his affair with the Empress. And
then drowning in the muck while like black goo falls out of her face. And like,
yeah. And apparently, Isla, I couldn't remember as much of her stuff or whatever. But apparently it was when her mother forced her to burn criminals, who are to become part of RavenClan. The initiation of RavenClan was burning criminals alive, which apparently that one flew over my head.
But this is the golden age of the elves. So, the world is such a nice place now.
Yeah. So they wake up, they're fine. And we meet Zakare and Syndrel. Syndrel's important too, because he's the one that discovered the monoliths in the first place and what they were able to do.
This is one of the few points that actually works well, because we see him in a prison scene earlier talking to Scary Magic Guy, and like we get a sense of who he is before he shows up, and that actually plays well up to this point of like, oh, this guy's here too. He seems important. We have some background. We understand who he is, right? But these other characters, not so much. And on top of it, I feel like these hallucination flashback scenes are only really there to try to flesh out the characters a little bit more, but they aren't very helpful in that. Yeah, particularly.
I don't know. But so they show up, and apparently they're celestial siblings. We'll get to that. Basically she's Zakari like heals him up. Also, her and Brother Death, they're an item, apparently.
Yeah. Seems to be a thing.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the Empire, we get to see Eridan, which we see more of. What was her name? I knew her name before and I already forgot it. The Empress, Merwin. Yeah, the Empress, she's realizing more and more that she's a puppet and that she needs to make moves in order to like not just be killed when they get tired of her, or she like outlives her usefulness. So she ends up going into the city and spies Eridan.
Bumps right into him. You might
recognize that name, by the way.
Yeah, Eridan, very important character.
Leader of the Wild Hunt. He's not this. I guess he's not even an A and L like he's supposed to be.
Or somehow the A and L come from here and then end up over there. Like, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
not important. But he's here. He's also one of the people that like Balor is working with the closest. I forgot to mention that. He's like the leader of
They're the
guard.
They're the two who seem to be most in the know with the coup and all that stuff.
They're running stuff. But Eridan's sneaking around, and she's like, "Wow, that's really suspicious." So she follows him. Which, by the way, she put on a cloak. Yeah, and that's her disguise.
Yep.
She didn't even change her hair in the weird like lattice work fashion craziness that is her hair design.
Right.
But she follows them or follows him to I guess Eridan's boyfriend's house, who he's apparently got a romantic entanglement with some merchant man who lives like a fancy life, and they're together and they're in love.
And we very quickly learn they could never be together. This is a secret thing. We got more Game of Thrones going on here.
Yeah. And so she like, spies on this, finds it out, and realizes like, oh man, I can blackmail him, and therefore he'll be on my side because he won't want to risk, the life of his person here. So she later shows up after that.
Yeah, it seems like it's later.
Well, she's got her actual clothes on now, as opposed to other things. Her cloak that she. Oh, by the way, we also got Avalok. Yeah,
we get a very apprehensive, kind of dorky Avalok.
Yeah, we got dorky Avalok, who is apparently he saves her from an assassin, so therefore becomes her most trusted confidant.
Using magic before the conjunction of the spears happens.
Yeah, he kills the assassin with magic. Balor's also using magic, by the way. Magic is apparently very prevalent here. So she's like, "Hey, I need you to go steal a book from Balor, because he's definitely got a book that pertains to the monoliths, and we need that." She's also obsessed with books. I noticed that she has like an obsession with reading, which is like cool, I guess. So she shows up after this. She's dressed up in her regular clothes. She's not trying to hide who she is. And she's like, "Hey, she's just being intimidating by being there and knowing what's up." And Eridan's like, this is a problem. But she's also like, "Hey, if you be on my side, I not only will I not tell anyone about this thing going on here, I will also promote your boyfriend to like head of mercantile business or something, like on a council that she's going to form.
We'll give him an awesome job, make him a somebody, and then you don't have to worry about him sneaking. I guess
because apparently there's been this dynamic. By the way, they don't explain really the relevance of this, but there's been this dynamic between the lowborn and the royalty.
Right.
So they're all part of royalty, and then everyone else is like a lowborn. And apparently you can't mix with the lowborns, which is just like, I feel like there's just unnecessary like racism.
Well, it's their way of justifying that they can't be together. Classism. Yeah, here's okay. This is going to sound like some of the other people on the internet, but I don't mean it in a negative way so much as I mean it. I don't know. Here, just listen to this. The reason why Eridan and his boyfriend can't be together is because there are class differences, not because they're gay. The show does not want to point out that people would be upset with him being gay. So they don't, which is fine. I think that's fine, but they needed some other reason they can't be together. So it has to be a class stratification thing. But they could have just this is a world full of racists and sexists and all sorts of terrible people. Why not just say people would not be okay? Like some people would be okay with him being gay, but some people won't. And so for that reason, we still can't be together, right? That could have been a justification and not promoted anti-LGBTQ stuff, right? Like, why not just exist in a realistic seeming world?
Yeah, but I don't know. They decided to go with the classism route. So like she's basically bribing him because if he becomes ambassador of trade, he's no longer lowborn, therefore they can get married and be together. And it's no longer like a crime for them to be together, which is, jeez. And then, so kind of And Balor is also talking to a mystical ball in some barren plane, some
Right.
other world, barren plane. He's trying to get chaos magic. He like sacrifices some celestial children, and gets fire in his hand for like 3 seconds, and is like, "Man, I have to do anything to get this or something."
Yeah, he's now on drugs.
Which is chaos magic. That's the big magic. That's
Fire.
That's obviously the strongest magic.
Fire.
Which is just fire. Sure, whatever. And that's that in the Empire. Also during this, we meet Meldoff, who is a dwarf. And
she's pretty cool.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
To say something positive, some of the characters I think are actually pretty cool. And some of the acting, there are moments where the acting is actually pretty good. So like her scene where we see that she's like marching into this place and trying to track down the man that killed the woman she loved or something like this, right? Like she even talks to the hammer, and like her as a character and her delivery as a character, I find pretty cool. Like,
yeah, she's the only character in this series who will actually like sort of get fleshed out. I'm gonna be entirely honest. In episode 3, we get the explanation for why she named her hammer Gwen and like the reasons why she's kind of the way she is. Mm-hmm. She will be the only character who actually gives us that reasoning, because Brother Death starts to, and she falls asleep on him. Yeah. Like they're talking, she tells him all of her tragic stuff. He starts to, and she's just like, "Oh man, boring," falls asleep. And it's like, okay, they're not going to flesh that out.
Why don't we have a character building moment for all the characters like we do with her? Like right at the beginning, like and that's part of how they structure this, was like, this is this many people come together into a group, and due to them uniting, they were able to achieve this crazy thing, right? Like that's the whole premise. So give us separate intro stories for every person, and then bring them together. Then they're doing the bring them together part, but only a few people do we ever get any like foundational anything, and that's a little weird.
That's at least foundational anything that's not exposition, because
it's not exposition,
right? All on Isla, but that was their exposition, which is not
right.
That's not storytelling. That's exposition. It's a different.
Right.
But yeah, so she's looking, or dwarf Meldoff. She goes to a brothel. She's looking for some dude named Taliesin One Eye. We don't actually see her go. Like we don't see into the brothel. We just like follow as
the camera, and the sound effects,
and she's like beating people up, looking for her, and then leaves.
And that was a pretty good scene. Like we didn't need to see her beat everybody up. It was fine. Like it explained enough in a way. The tone of it, the delivery worked.
Yeah. And then later on, she, I guess, finds him, kills him, and she's like writing stuff on the walls in his blood. I guess as
basically, here's who he is, here's what he did, and this is who murdered him. Like as like a warning to anybody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Is this the episode that they go to a separate world and see a giant scorpion and then run away?
Yes.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
They find
they try to use the portal in order to portal into the main portal in the city, and then they end up in some other realm, and there's some big, I don't know, crustacean living in the water with a shiny thing. And
it's like it looked like a big like centipede or something. I don't know. It was whatever, and that was the end for them. So they went there, and then it was kind of like a dramatic cutoff or whatever. And that's for the 2 episodes. That's kind of the summary.
That's it. Yeah. Well, tell you what, we've got some more thoughts on this stuff. We need to cover that stuff as well. But first, we got to thank our patrons. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to wrap this up with a summary. So don't go anywhere.
Very well. Let us get this over with. Something has infested my vineyard.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let me go prepare my something oil then.
All right, here we are in the middle of the show. This is where we get to thank our patrons, and thank you everybody who supported us through this last year, and welcome to 2023. And anyone who is interested,
2023.
I know, isn't that crazy? Anyone interested in joining us on the Patreon, it's patreon.com/Witcher Lorecast. You get ad-free episodes. You can join us on the chat episodes at the end of the month. There's t-shirts or all sorts of other things on there. So go check that out. And we have to shout out our higher vampire tier patrons. And first of all, thank you to all 15 of our current current patrons. Thanks for being here for us. Ben of Temeria and Jared M. Thanks for supporting us as higher vampires. And I don't have too much else to say about that. Also, we don't have any new reviews this week, but if you'd like to leave us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts, please feel free to do that, and we'll read it out on a future episode of the show. And yeah, just real quick in here, Rob in chat says, there's not really a right answer. There's nothing wrong with not wanting homophobia in your fantasy world. Sure, true point. You're correct. But there's also not much wrong with portraying a relationship that goes through those real world struggles. Yes. And this is one of those nuanced things where it's like, I don't know. You're right. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It just feels like this could have been a thing that people had problems with, but they just don't bring it up, which is, I guess, is fine. It's fine either way. So anyway, we'll move on from that. But thank you, everybody, for your support. And why don't we move on with the rest of the show? Here we go.
You smell of death and destiny, heroics and heartbreak.
It's onion.
Right, yeah.
All right, Toasty, we've recapped the first 2 episodes, which you have said are the better 2 episodes because it just continues to go downhill from here.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's talk some pros and cons just on these 2 episodes alone. Mm-hmm. What things do you feel like were good?
Like we mentioned during that part or whatever, I like the fight scene, like with the bank. I thought that was pretty cool. Some
of the settings are actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Some of the sets are cool. Some of the villages and things they go to. There was one scene. Oh, the one where we see the prison cell of, I forget his name, the one wizard guy that we meet later who joins the party. Syndril. And we see him in the prison cell, and just like it's all these weird things poking out of the walls. It was very...
It's a Dimeridium cell, that's why. Because he was a mage.
Yeah.
They put him in the Dimeridium cell.
So that's Dimeridian stuff sticking out of the walls?
Yeah, supposed to be... that's because... like later, we find out later, I think, that Balor specifically constructed that cell for problem mages.
Mm-hmm. Like, that's cool. So, that's interesting. Like, that looked really cool. Some of the scenes and some of the settings, some of the nature views, some of that stuff, very, very pretty. Them walking through the interesting landscapes.
Like the locations they filmed it at, like the places are like gorgeous. I mean, like the whole the wastes area I thought was really cool, like the black sand everywhere. That was sick, but it was like sure, like the settings were really cool. The fight was cool. I think that Isla's intro was cool. Fjall was kind of whatever. Like, he was just like a big dude with an axe fighting people. Whatever. He couldn't keep it in his pants. Whatever. Isla was like, she's like a traveling bard. She seems like kind of unassuming with like the fact that she's a bard, but then one of the Ithlings getting harassed in the bar by some dude. Creepy ass fucking moment, by the way. So she kicks his ass, kicks the other one's ass, it goes back to singing. I thought that was cool. I thought it was funny, like the way they did that. It kind of sets her as like she's both like, got like the dynamic of like being appreciative for the arts and not really like wanting to like be involved, because we find out she doesn't want to be involved with the politics. She just wants to travel around or whatever. But she's still a fucking badass.
Right. She's trained. She's a trained fighter, unlike these drunk guys at the bar. Right.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a cool like dynamic or whatever. And but like, and
but that's about it.
No offense, Tom. It's other than that, like, I'd be like, I'm trying to like reach for stuff that I like really liked.
Okay. I think one of the biggest issues is it just doesn't feel like The Witcher. It feels like somebody's generic D&D campaign is what it feels like.
Yeah.
There's like, well, we need this character in the group, and we need this character in the group, and now we need this character in the group, and then the fact that like we can't like you and I throughout the beginning of the episode talked about like how does this fit into the lore? How does it not fit into the lore? It doesn't strongly fit into anything. There's the what it is doing is it's trying to explain the monoliths and the something of the spheres. What is that word? Conjunction of the spheres, right? It's trying to explain those two things at a point in time and why the monoliths are interesting and important so that when season 3 comes out, we're going to have more context for what's going on in season 3, right? I feel like that's the point of this. What they didn't do is continue the tone correctly for the world of The Witcher in a way that makes sense for the world, because we know The Witcher is a dark fantasy place. When we visit it at the time of Geralt, which is run by men, and we know that men are rough and rude and uncivilized, and they do terrible things to each other. And so therefore that's a dark world. And then we're now moved back 1,200 years to the time of the High Elves and the high golden age of the elves, which could have been dynamically different from the world of the men, but just feels like the world of the men.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It doesn't feel like these high, like, why not make less of a class stratification? Why not make it more idyllic, right? And the idealized version of the world is broken by people who are seeking power. But for the most part, everything's pretty good for everybody, right?
Yeah,
maybe the elves work better together.
That like whole, like the lowborn, highborn thing, like threw me for such a loop. Just because like one specifically, like I don't like, as far as the lore tells us from what we know in the established lore, like, I mean, what, like elves just don't do that. Like they're just not, they don't, like they didn't, like the ones that we know, and like granted they're like the bottom of the barrel, so honestly they're like having a class stratification among elves just doesn't make sense in current times. But like it just doesn't strike me as like if the elves are in charge, and this is before the time of the humans, when the humans came along and ruined everything, because that's what they tell us, is that the humans were the problem. Right.
That like, this was a more idyllic age.
Like the elves, I know that there was wars and things that they fought. Like the elves obviously didn't get along with like the dwarves, and like we could even had that. We could have had it to where it was like the elves coming in and like messing things up for like the dwarves and the other natives to the continent or whatever. But no, the main plot is that there's the highborn and the lowborn, and because of this class stratification, everything in this plot line happens. Yeah. That's generally the foundation. And it doesn't seem like, it doesn't make sense for one, and also like you don't need to have themes like that in order to have a good story. Right. And like, I feel like we should lean into ideas, or at least do it well, because it wasn't done well.
Right. And maybe if everything is terrible, then everything is terrible. You know, like go further in that direction. But yeah, it's kind of this weird middle place. The other thing is, and so next point, it doesn't really, and we've talked about this a little bit, but it just doesn't fit into the lore. There's magic in the world before the conjunction happens. There's like, what? Why wasn't the conjunction?
There's the ability to travel to other worlds before the conjunction happens. Like we know that the elves did that like at some point from their like home world, because like their home world was messed up. And so the A and she hopped off onto the continent, and the A and L went to another world. Right. That's what we're told. Right. But like that, I guess, didn't happen because we have 2 A and L here on the continent before the conjunction of the spheres, because we have Aridin, who's supposed to be on another world right now, and Avalok, who's supposed to be on another world right now, because they're both A and L. They're not supposed to be here.
Right. And that doesn't make sense. Then we have the whole monolith thing, and it's told to us that the monoliths are of dwarven make and are ancient, and that they've been rediscovered by the elves and now utilized in some way.
And they're supposed to, the dwarves made them to be able to like enrich resources, which also, by the way, there's another big plot line there, is that they don't have enough resources to sustain. So the reason that they need to go to other worlds is to get the resources.
But wasn't that the promise of the continent to the elves that wanted to move there, was that it was a resource rich world, and so it was worth settling?
Yeah, but apparently it wasn't. So because they're running out, like their granaries are almost dry, and so they have to go to other worlds. But I guess there's a part of it that Balor just didn't tell them, because the only world that they've gone to at this point is a dry, barren wasteland that doesn't have any resources whatsoever.
Right.
So, but so.
Then the pillars themselves are have been buried and are dwarven made and have been rediscovered.
Supposed to be able to enrich the environment, I believe. I can't remember the exact explanation that they give us, but it's supposed to be that they built them to enrich the environment. So why can they be the channel between? Maybe they just channel
magic somehow, but then also, why do they look pristine if they're ancient objects that have been buried forever? Couldn't they look a little bit more worn and still be functional?
Why can they be moved? You notice that the big monolith after the thing, it wasn't in the center of the Zentrian castle.
Yeah, they moved it.
But they moved it there, and it yet still had the same magical potential being there rather than being buried in the dirt where it was.
Right. It's not about its location on the planet. It's about where it just has magical powers. So so all of this stuff doesn't make sense with the lore. And then I guess the question becomes, and Rob asked it in chat, he says, objectively removed from the Witcher universe, is this a good show? So we've been complaining about a lot of the context in just how does this not fit into the Witcher universe, but I think you probably could tell from our synopsis of the first 2 episodes that there's a lot of stuff that just functionally for a show just is problematic.
It's one... So, getting into some of the actual legitimate cons that aren't Witcher related as far as the lore goes. There's one, it was too short. 4 episodes was not enough to tell this story that they wanted to tell. And there is way too many characters that they want us to there's way too many main characters, because if you include the 7, because this is the tale of the 7, by the way. The lady told us that she is going, she wants Jaskier to tell the tale of the 7, which, by the way, I believe that they released a Jaskier song about the 7 on Twitter at some point or whatever, a couple days after it was released. So I'm sure that we're going to have to listen to that during season 3. So that's going to be great. But it's supposed to tell the tale of the 7. So there's 7 characters, plus Aridin, plus Balor, plus Merwin.
Right.
That's 10 people in 4 episodes that they're supposed to we're supposed to be fleshed out, and we're supposed to understand and
right. And if an episode is 50 minutes long, 40 to 50 minutes long, this is the equivalent of one very long movie.
Yeah.
There's not even very long, a 3.5 hour movie. That's where we're at with this, right?
Yeah.
So
that's way too much information to give us with too little time to explain it. Maybe if honestly, if they had we could have done with just Fial and Isla, and that would have been it. And they could have taken the time to have them have more just conversations with each other and get to know and flesh each other out or whatever.
Right. And come across other characters along the way, but not necessarily bring them into the party as somebody came by our D&D adventure and they want to sit in. We've already been playing for 10 hours, but let's roll them a character. That's what that kind of feels like, right?
Yeah. And you could have maybe even gotten Skian in there, because I feel like they did.
Sure.
Sort of fleshed her out a decent amount, with the time that they had. And you could have probably had the 3 of them, and that was it. And they go and hire some sellswords, and that's their force to get into the thing.
Here's another thing though, because we're getting less time for what could have been the main characters. After the first 2 episodes, for me, it feels like I still don't really know or like any of the main characters particularly. right? Like we just like it's simplest version of this dilemma is we just don't even know them or like them that much yet.
Yeah, so this is a common like thing in a like with like a bunch of like specifically like I hear this a lot because I like listen to like anime podcasts, and this is like a lot of things they do in anime is that like they'll introduce characters and then they'll tell you the reasons why you should care about the character, but they don't give you a reason to care about them. They just tell you, hey, this is why you should care about this character.
And you can tell they tried, like the bar scene where she beats up the guys picking on the girl. That gives us some insight into her. Okay, she's obviously a capable warrior, but she's doing the right thing. She's standing up against bad dudes. Like that gives us some sense of that. And then you have the death of the sister. Like it's like you have all of these plot moments. Like they, again, checked it off a list of things that you're supposed to do, but none of them land particularly well.
Yeah. Like I think Isla specifically had the potential to be an incredible character. They will throw her character, like the minimal character arc that she has, they will throw it in the garbage in the next 2 episodes. I'm going to tell you that right now. Yeah. The stuff that they do with her as like the like what they like downgrade her to is absolutely disgusting. Like it pisses me off what they did to her because she had the potential to be a really good character. Y'all, he's supposed to be a main character, dude. Like I don't care. Like he got banished from his family because he couldn't keep it in his pants.
Right.
I don't care. Like I really don't.
I think the other dilemma here is that if you look at any of the main characters that we've met so far, they can all be described as disgruntled, badass, upset with their current situation, ready to kick everybody's butt. Like that's it. We don't have like you take a film like, for example, Star Wars. Let's just use Star Wars, right? And you've got the three main characters. You've got Luke, Leia, and Han. And they are dynamically very different individuals with very different motivations. But they themselves, their personalities, like Luke doesn't come across like a badass because he's not yet. He's proving himself. Leia is a badass, but we don't know why, right? She's the princess. She should be fancy princess lady, but she's not. Han acts like a badass, but he actually cares, right? Like the character arcs and dynamics for each of those characters are unique and individual to them. And we watch as they merge together over time and grow closer together. In this, we just have badass character with some personal reasons for doing things. Other badass character with everybody hates everybody. Everyone's ready to cut each other down at a moment's notice, but then they decide not to. And so they start to get along together. Like, that's it. That's all we know about any of these characters, really.
Yeah, and there's like they also like try, like they give us like, you know, familial attachments or whatever, but it's like we didn't see these characters with their family at any point.
We didn't experience
so when
it.
their family,
right.
Like when Isla's sister dies, it's like I like, why do I care? Like I didn't see her with her, but for like a minute and a half. Like that's how long they're like that whole scene was with her being like with her sister. And then like with Fjall, we don't even realize that this dude is his dad until he's like being ushered across the border. He's like, goodbye, father. And it's like it doesn't feel like that's your dad. Like I get it. Like he's doing what he has to do because you fucked up.
Right.
But like at no point during that do I feel like this is your dad.
I think the issue is we don't have a strong enough core character. They're dividing the core character among at least two of them, right? Yeah. If you follow, like it works for The Witcher because Geralt is our core character, and then we come to learn more about Yennefer, and we come to, and the truth be told, they split it because they showed us all three of them, but you could still argue that Geralt is the core character, and it's nice to learn more about Ciri, and it's nice to learn more about Yennefer, but ultimately everything focuses on Geralt's perspective.
Yeah.
And this doesn't have that. Like, whose perspective are we even looking at this from? Like, isn't that a thing you're supposed to do in like directing? Like when you learn to direct a film or even write a book and a novel, is understand whose perspective, like who's the perspective character in this chapter?
Because you set. I mean, you set when you're starting a book, you set it from the POV, like a certain POV. Right. Like you go like first person limited.
Right.
Which is just like you are the person or whatever seeing it.
What we're getting, the perspective that we're getting,
or third person omniscient.
So the perspective we're getting for this whole thing is the storyteller's perspective, which keeps us at a distance. We're now watching the world. We're basically listening to someone tell us a story. We're not actually watching the story unfold or experiencing it directly ourselves.
And this is like it's obvious that if we're seeing this from like the storytellers, who this random lady who's telling Yaskier the story or whatever, it's also like so obvious that like she like doesn't even have the full perspective because she's leaving out so many details.
Right.
Like that's what it feels like. It's like, like this is where we're at, because
which can work, but you have to be able to zoom into the characters and see things from their limited perspectives to make that really feel real. Otherwise, it just sounds like somebody who's just making stuff up because they're telling a story.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And then like, it's kind of like, there's other stuff that like, we'll talk more about next, because there's some things that like aren't really as here as they are in like the next two episodes.
So it's like cringy scenes, character development not working out so well.
But I will like, I think this isn't even a thing. This is just factual information that we need to see more representation in like media or whatever, like LGBTQ representation.
Which, by the way, let me because I made a statement I think some people might take out of context. Toasty and I are very for LGBTQ representation in media. It is important. Representation of everything should be representative in media in ways that make sense and work for the story.
And that are done well.
You shouldn't avoid it, but you also don't need to cram it in ways that don't make sense for the story or aren't done very well. Just like any plot point at all, it should be done well, not just crammed into a story.
Yeah. So the things that I think like it needs to be done well, and I just don't think this show did any of their representation. Because like one, we obviously see like Aridin and his boyfriend. They don't develop that at all. They just show it to us for the 10 minutes that we get it.
Right. And
it's like it feels like they just were like, here, let's slap some gay dudes in there.
It's an opportunity. We might as well make it gay.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Because like, yes, right. It is true. They did have two men kissing on the screen, which like most people are too afraid to do that. But like, don't give it to us just to be like, here it is. We had two dudes kissing. You like shut up now. Like we had. It
either feels like you're checking it off the list, or it feels like we're going to insert this for shock value because some people will cringe at it.
It seems like they did both. And it's like, honestly,
both of those are bad reasons to do it. That's not the right reason to do it, because it feels organic and it's natural to who the character is and it fits in the show. Yeah, don't do it to manipulate the audience.
Yeah. And then there is, which also to mention, there is a deaf character who is played by a deaf actress in this. But unfortunately for that character, they don't do anything with her. She's supposed to be Balor's like assistant, and she makes some snarky comments in the show, and that is all. She gets like, I don't know, like 5 lines, I think, in the entire series. And like, but it's like, hey, we're representing because we have a deaf actress playing a deaf character. We're representing things here. And it's like, you're just throwing it in there just to say that you have it in there. You're not actually like fleshing it out or making them like a compelling or interesting character. Right. They're just there. Which I guess is fine, because most of the characters in this show are also just there, to be honest.
Even a lot of the main ones just feel like they're just there.
I guess it's fine, but like that feels bad. And then you said you like her. Specifically, the dwarf character.
So here's where we're at, just so people understand our perspectives and why they're different right now, because I might line up more with you in the future. I've watched the first 2, and then I haven't watched the next 2 yet. And so we're talking about the first two for this week. I will definitely watch the next two for the next time we talk, but I don't know what else happens other than just like a general sense of like, this is probably where the story's going. Right. And so for the scenes that I've seen her in so far, I think the actress does a great job. I think she, as an actress, plays the character well. And I think the character is setting up to be interesting. She talks to her hammer. She scrawls things on the wall when she murders somebody. Like, okay, maybe this goes somewhere, right?
See, so I specifically, because the next thing, it's like the next two episodes is fine, like whatever. That particular part I did not like.
Okay.
Because I feel like that they were making her a very like tropey kind of crazy. Like, I'm fine with her talking to her hammer. The reason that she talks to her hammer that they tell us later, okay, cool. That's fine. I get it. And like, I even kind of like the explanation for it, I think is like, honestly, pretty compelling. But like the murdering crazy writing on the walls that they went for there, I felt like
it's too far. A little bit too. Yeah.
Because then they explain the reason why. And it's like they and it's just like they're not handling that kind of representation well either.
Right.
Because
like if they're talking about mental illness
in a show, they're going over the top, far beyond crazy is what they went for. And it's nuanced.
Right.
Like mental health is a very nuanced perspective. And like to see nuanced views of and takes on that in media, I think is like we do need to see that more. But like most media just jumps immediately to like, how can we make this character as off the wall as possible
as a cartoon? See, I was hoping with that scene that we would get, and you know, like they haven't explained why she is the way she is yet as of episode 2. I was hoping we would get some fundamentally deep and weird reason why she's so weird, right? Like some form, like, and not just like I have emotional trauma because something bad happened, right? And just that, like that is a legit
reason,
right? I get what you're saying. That's going to be the reason, right? And so so that leads to normal mental illness kinds of things and people who have to deal with things, but don't necessarily jump off the deep end and murder people and scrawl their blood on the wall, right? So like, a better reason for something like that might be the elves burned her village and then did some crazy, terrible, bad magic crap all over the place. And now she's mentally broken, right? On a fundamental, like fantasy magic, dark magic kind of way. And she's trying to find redemption, but yet she does these terrible things. Like that would have been a much more interesting character arc who could have done some weird stuff. And you have some really messed up reason why that is. But like you're saying, I agree. If it's just and just in the real world is not just
like the reason the trauma, like it's this is probably me speaking too highly of like what ends up being the reason, because it's just like, it's like one of the like one time they do actual like sort of character development in the show that like I'm appreciating it probably more than it deserves to be appreciated, but it felt compelling. Like it felt like a compelling reason. And I was kind of sad for that. Really, like I was sad that it happened, but it was also like it's
not a strong enough justification.
Does not correlate with you being batshit crazy.
Right. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And I can see how that breaks the character. But I like the actress and like for being a crazy character, I think she does a great job. I think she like this. That's pretty cool. Good job. Yeah. And some of the other actors, like you can tell that, and this is the other thing I wanted to share about the whole acting thing. You can tell that the actors are given, like, this is the feeling. Go back to Star Wars. This is the Star Wars reference. You know, when you're watching one of the Star Wars movies that like Lucas wrote the dialogue for, and then you feel bad for the actor who has to say the terrible dialogue, but they're giving it their best. You can tell they're giving it their best. They're in character. They're landing all the stuff that they've been told to do, and the directing or the dialogue are what's screwing it over. That's what I feel like.
Attack of the Clone, basically all of Anakin's lines.
Yes. That's what it feels like. But it feels like the actors in the show are giving it their best. Most of them. I mean, some of them are
Oh yeah, for sure. Hayden Christensen, fucking
right. But in this show too, I feel like for the most part, these actors are like they're doing their jobs. They just aren't given very good characters or very good lines or
Yeah.
The directing just was like, that's kind of the sense I have of it, is just like, it's not the actors' faults. It's
usually not. It's usually
not
the writing.
Yeah.
There is, like, most of the time it's the writing. The actors are like giving it their all,
Right.
and sometimes that even like saves it to an extent.
I'm going to go back to the D&D thing, because I feel like this just feels like it's on the level of a D&D campaign that you and I could throw together in a week and then take our friends on. That's what this feels like.
Bro, I feel like I'd like to give myself credit and say that I feel like I'd write a better story in my D&D game than this.
But that's the tone, that's the feeling of it.
Yeah.
And for being
like
a Netflix show,
never done it before, got together and were like, like, okay, and it's like, we
need to have a motivation for the bad guy. All right, how about this? We need to have a reason why this person, we should like them. Okay, they did this nice thing. We need to have, like again, check it off the list. But
and it's even to the extent of like in a D&D campaign of like the DM having like information for the stuff that's happening that the players don't yet know, and so you just have those gaps. It still feels like that, because like there's like things happening, but like there's not reasons for the things happening, and it's like, oh no, the DM just hasn't told us yet, I guess.
Right.
Like,
right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And the other feeling I get is like, it's the difference between looking at a painting and somebody who knows how to blend all the colors well in a painting, so that there's these gradual transitions, and then somebody trying to do the same painting with a bunch of markers. Does that make sense? Like, there's no nuance in the way things develop, the way things move. Everything's either 11 or non-existent. It's like everything. It's like running too much compression on your audio. Everything's just like, oh, this scene is terrible because of this thing. Oh, everyone's going to die. And then they don't. Nobody's going to agree to this thing. And then they do. Like, it's just like off switch, on switch, off switch, on switch. Right. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're looking at, and like, we're not even like too off the wall talking about this stuff. Like Tom said at the beginning, we're not here to like bash on things, or like that's not our purpose in this.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it was just like it seems like the 92% of people agree with us according to the reviews.
Yeah.
It's like, this thing has an 8% audience score.
Yeah, this was not The Witcher. The writers
incredibly low.
Do not understand the nuance of the original works at all. The way that the reason why those stories are beloved did not come through in anything so far.
They just don't respect it, and we've seen evidence up to this point that they don't.
But maybe it's not even a respect thing. Maybe they're just unaware. Maybe they just don't know. Like, there's reasons why those stories resonate, and it's because they turn things on their head. There's nuance. There's gradual character development. There's a lot of I don't know. It's like more analogies here. It's like a very, very it's like a garden that's been tended for 50 years and has a lot of detail in it, rather than somebody just planted a tree out back. It's what it feels like.
Yeah. Well, it's just like we've starting to like see. I mean, because we saw like, and obviously take everything with a grain of salt, but there was one of the like ex writers for The Witcher came out and said that the people in the writing room were like roasting the works.
Oh, sure.
And saying that they could write a better story. And they were given, I feel like this is the opportunity. They took this opportunity to write a better story. Mm-hmm. And this is what they came up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but we've gone pretty long today. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this. I hope you didn't take anything that we were saying out of context, because somebody's gonna yell at me. They'll be like, "Well, you don't want gay people in your movies, or you think gay people should be in every movie, or whatever." They're gonna misunderstand it for both reasons. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I think the best summary for that part was when we were like, it needs to be done in a way that's natural and fits the story for the sake of the story. Let's do it that, let's not just cram it in there and make it feel weird. But anyway, but Toast, you got anything else going on you want to share before we head out?
Gosh. Follow us at the Lorecast on Twitter. go check out the Cyberpunk Lorecast that I do with Genesis.
And Cyberpunk.
If you're
right?
Yeah, also it was Cyberpunk Lorecast and Cyberpunked. Sorry, my brain's fried. I've been I've spent so much energy in that.
Too much blood order.
The Cyberpunk is Cyberpunk Red actual play podcast that I do with Fun League 4 and Almighty Crit Gang. So if you like Cyberpunk, which, you know, in complete contrast, it seems to be pretty on the up and up right now. You know, so,
right. They take that world and put it into a show, and all of a sudden it works. Yeah. Well, awesome. Go check that stuff out. You can find links to those and my shows at robotsradio.net. So if you're into anything else like Fallout or Mass Effect or Elder Scrolls or Lord of the Rings, I've got lorecasts about all of those. So go check those out as well. And we'll be back next week with the next 2 episodes and a recap on those. And I hear they get even worse. So we'll see if Toasty survives. So thanks for being here. Love to hear your thoughts. Join us on the Discord and we'll talk to you next time. Until then,
stay safe on the path.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Witcher Lorecast. We'd love to hear about your experiences with the games and the books and the TV series and all your thoughts on everything. Please check out the Robots Radio Discord and follow us on Twitter at Witcher Lorecast.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.